Imagine, uh, if you will, a force fueled by just pure, unadulterated, completely unthinking rage.
Right.
When you picture that in your head, what comes to mind? Like if you're like most people listening to this, you probably picture a riot,
Right.
right?
Oh, yeah, definitely. A mindless mob tearing through a city street or something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just completely unpredictable. Like they are overturning cars, smashing windows, destroying absolutely everything in their path.
And with no real objective, right, other than just the sheer act of destruction itself.
Right. And it's terrifying, absolutely.
Yeah.
But it's chaotic in a disorganized, almost accidental kind of way.
Yeah, you can run from it. You can hide.
Exactly. You can hide from it because a mob doesn't have a strategy. But now I want you to change that image in your head for a second.
Okay, I'm with you.
Imagine that exact same level of blinding volcanic fury. I mean, the kind of anger that makes your vision go red and completely bypasses the logical centers of the brain.
Just total unrestrained hostility.
Yeah. But instead of a disorganized mob, imagine this force is wielded with the absolute surgical precision of an elite military vanguard.
Oh, wow. That is a terrifying thought.
Right. They aren't just thrashing wildly in the streets. They are directed. They are weaponized.
They're disciplined.
Exactly. They are holding the line, waiting in total silence, and they only unleash that apocalyptic rage exactly when and where they are commanded to.
See, that completely changes the fundamental nature of the threat.
How so?
Well, you go from dealing with, a natural disaster, like a hurricane, which is devastating, sure, but ultimately mindless and subject to the whims of atmospheric pressure.
Right, it's just weather.
Exactly. You go from that to dealing with a hyper-advanced laser-guided missile that just so happens to be powered by a hurricane.
A laser-guided hurricane. I love that.
It is a profound difference in application, Like a hurricane you can track on a radar and just evacuate from, but a laser-guided hurricane, that finds you in your bunker.
That is the absolute perfect way to set the stage for what we're doing today. Because today we are taking a deep dive into the architecture of exactly that kind of weapon.
It's such a fascinating topic.
It really is. We are looking at a very specific, deeply complex piece of lore centered around a faction known as the Hounds of Abaddon.
Which, just going by the name, sounds incredibly intense.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
On the surface, the source material we are pulling from today is dripping with this grim, gothic, heavily exaggerated imagery.
Yeah, we are talking about literal worshippers of a blood god.
Right. Crimson-clad shock troops. Things that sound like they belong on the cover of the most intense, face-melting heavy metal album ever recorded.
And I think it would be incredibly easy to just look at that surface level, to focus entirely on the blood and the brutality.
Just treat it like a crazy sci-fi action movie.
Exactly. Treat it merely as an exercise in dark, over-the-top fiction. But if we do that, we miss the entire underlying architecture of what's actually being described. We miss the mechanics.
Which is exactly why our mission for this deep dive is to look way past all that superficial blood and brutality.
We have to put this entire faction under the microscope.
We really do. Because underneath that grim, dark, bloody exterior, this is actually a masterclass study in organizational psychology.
It truly is. It's a brilliant, terrifying exploration of dual loyalty.
And of managing highly volatile elements. Plus the incredibly pragmatic leadership required within a massive, complex structure.
So today, you and I are going to unpack how a leader actually controls the uncontrollable.
Because whether you were managing a legion of, I don't know, genetically modified super soldiers, or just a team of highly aggressive, eccentric tech developers in Silicon Valley.
Which can sometimes feel like the same thing.
Yeah, right. The core question remains exactly the same. How do you harness a destructive, singular obsession without letting it run down your entire operation?
To do that effectively, though, we need to establish the factual baseline we are working from today.
Let's lay the groundwork. Where are we starting?
Well, the world we are examining provides a very specific focus. We are analyzing these Hounds of Abaddon.
Okay.
Historically, within this universe, these are the crimson-clad shock troops who serve as the literal and metaphorical tip of the spear for a supreme commander known as Abaddon the Despoiler.
Abaddon the Despoiler. Got it.
But the most crucial piece of baseline information, the thing that sets them apart from just being, really good soldiers, is that these hounds are entirely defined by their religious, visceral devotion to an entity known as Khorne, the blood god.
Right. And I want to make sure we are really grounding this for you listening right now.
Definitely important.
Because while we're dealing with extreme fictional concepts here, traitor legions, cosmic blood gods, apocalyptic warlords, The dynamics we are going to explore are deeply rooted in real-world, historical, and modern organizational parallels.
Absolutely. We're talking about the mechanics of harnessing extreme volatile elements within any grand overarching structure.
Exactly. So think about your own workplace or maybe a team you've managed.
Yeah. Have you ever had a top performer who was incredibly productive but completely toxic to the broader company culture?
Oh man, we've all been there.
Right. How do you keep an organization from tearing itself apart when a massive portion of it becomes radically fanatic about one specific, highly aggressive methodology?
That is the central tension we are unpacking today.
It's a problem that the Roman Empire faced when trying to integrate volatile barbarian auxiliaries into their rigid legionary
Oh, that's
structures.
a great historical parallel.
Or even modern massive financial institutions. They face this when dealing with highly aggressive, high-risk trading desks.
The guys who bring in massive profits but threaten to destabilize the entire bank if they go unchecked.
Exactly. How do you integrate a highly specialized, highly volatile subfaction without letting it consume the entire enterprise?
So, to really understand how these Hounds of Abaddon operate, and how they don't just immediately turn around and destroy their own allies, we first have to understand the environment that actually birthed them.
Because they didn't just show up one day out of nowhere.
No, they weren't hired off a cosmic job board. The history here tells us we are dealing with a massive, pluralistic system of chaotic allegiances.
Yes, their origins are absolutely vital to understanding their psychology.
Where did it come from then?
Well, the Hounds of Abaddon were not mercenaries brought in from the outside to do a dirty job. They were not some allied war band that negotiated a treaty with Abaddon.
They were internal.
Entirely. They were born organically from within the ranks of a much larger organization called the Black Legion.
And just to give everyone listening a sense of scale, the Black Legion is no small thing. We aren't talking about a rogue platoon of 20 guys.
Not at all. The Black Legion is defined as the largest, most formidable, and most structurally complex of all the traitor legions.
Okay.
But what's vital for our analysis today is their overarching ideology, their foundational mission statement, if you will.
Which is what?
The Black Legion is dedicated to a concept called chaos undivided.
Chaos undivided. Yeah. Okay. Which, for those who might not be steeped in the lore, basically means they draw their strength, their purpose, and their cosmic backing from all four of the major dark gods in this universe.
Right. They aren't supposed to play favorites.
Exactly. They're supposed to worship the pantheon as a whole.
Yeah.
It's an equal opportunity evil, I guess.
Precisely. They operate as a pluralistic system. They are supposed to balance these diverse, intensely conflicting cosmic forces to maintain a unified overarching power structure.
Which sounds exhausting, honestly.
It is a broad, encompassing allegiance that requires balancing the god of decay, the god of excess, the god of change, and the god of blood.
Okay, let's stop right there, because this is where the organizational psychology really kicks in for me.
Let's hear it.
I want to use an analogy to really hammer home what chaos undivided feels like and why it is inherently unstable.
Sure.
Let's move away from the corporate boardroom metaphors for a second and think about something way more volatile.
Okay, what do you have in mind?
Imagine the Black Legion's ideology is like trying to manually operate a massive, highly unstable nuclear reactor.
Oh, I like this.
Right. You have four different types of core energies representing the four gods. And to keep the reactor generating power without completely melting down, you have to constantly obsessively adjust the control rods.
You have to balance the heat, the pressure, the radiation.
Yes. That is what Chaos Undivided is. It is the exhausting, never-ending task of balancing extreme, conflicting forces so that the overarching structure, the reactor, or in this case, the Legion, can continue to function.
That is an excellent, highly mechanical metaphor. The strength of the reactor relies entirely on the operators maintaining that excruciatingly delicate balance.
Right. And if you screw up...
If you favor one core energy too much, the whole facility explodes.
Exactly. It requires incredible focus. But then, naturally, deep within this complex system, a massive contingent of your operators, thousands of your most elite warriors start to crack under the pressure.
It's just too much cognitive load.
Right. They get exhausted by the balancing act. And they start becoming dangerously magnetically obsessed with just one of those core energies.
Specifically the energy of corn.
Yes, who is identified as the god of blood, rage, and war. So my question to you, and the pushback I have against this whole Chaos Undivided model being viable in the first place, is this.
Okay, lay it on me.
How in the world does a massive organization maintain its central identity. How does the reactor not melt down when a huge chunk of its populace just drops the control rods and starts worshiping a completely different, highly specific extremity?
It's a great question.
Doesn't that just fundamentally break the system? I mean, how does it survive that?
What's fascinating here is that you've identified the exact fatal vulnerability of any pluralistic system, whether it's a galactic legion or just a modern political coalition.
This universal flaw.
It really is. When a system is built on something as broad, abstract, and mentally taxing as chaos undivided, extreme specialization isn't just a risk. Psychologically speaking, it is almost inevitable.
Inevitable. That's a really strong word. Why is it inevitable? Why can't they just stick to the program and follow the employee handbook?
Because human nature, or in this case, the post-human genetically modified nature of these super soldiers, naturally gravitates toward focused, tangible absolutes.
Okay, I can see that.
Think deeply about the psychological weight of chaos undivided that you just described with your reactor metaphor.
It's heavy.
It requires a constant, delicate balancing act of competing philosophies, competing desires, competing cosmic entities literally whispering in your mind.
Right, constantly pulling you in different directions.
It is an abstract pluralism. It requires you to be a generalist of the darkest, most complicated kind.
Which is hard.
That takes immense, almost impossible mental and spiritual discipline. You are constantly having to say no to one impulse to satisfy another.
Right, it's cognitively exhausting. It's like trying to listen to 4 different intense radio stations at the exact same time and trying to find some kind of harmony between them.
That's a great way to put it.
Eventually, you just want to turn 3 of them off. Right?
Right.
Just give me one clear station.
Exactly. The cognitive load is staggering. But then you have Korn, the god of blood, rage, and war.
Who is completely different.
There is absolutely zero abstraction there. There is no nuance. It is entirely visceral. It is immediate.
Just blood and violence.
Korn offers a singular, overwhelmingly clear purpose. Destroy the enemy standing directly in front of you, period.
No questions asked?
No scheming, no complex magical rituals, no existential dread about decay, just the physical, kinetic reality of a swinging blade.
And for these guys.
For a warrior whose entire existence is already predicated on violence, the psychological pull of that sheer simplicity must be intoxicating.
Oh, I bet.
They don't have to worry about the grand, complex tapestry of the universe anymore. They just have to give in to the rage.
So what you're saying is it's actually less about them actively rebelling against the Black Legion intentionally and more about them just seeking the path of least psychological resistance. The pure, unadulterated release of rage is just so much easier to digest than a complex, multi-layered theology. They are dropping the control rods because holding them up is just too heavy.
Yes, they are seeking a tangible absolute to ground themselves.
That makes total sense.
And in any massive organization, when the overarching mission becomes too abstract, too political, or too complex, the people on the ground will inevitably latch onto the most concrete, actionable, and emotionally resonant subculture available to them.
Because they need something real to hold on to.
We see this documented clearly in the lore. It states that thousands of warriors feel a particular pull towards Horn.
A pull, huh?
Notice the language. It's described almost like a force of nature, like a center of gravity. They are being pulled away from the broad mission of the Legion and sinking into the dense, heavy reality of pure warfare.
It is a psychological anchoring mechanism.
Precisely.
Which, while may be great for the individual soldier's peace of mind, creates a massive headache for middle and upper management.
Oh, an absolute nightmare.
Because now you have thousands of your most lethal, heavily armored assets basically forgetting the company mission statement because they are addicted to the visceral thrill of the fight.
They've gone completely rogue mentally.
Right. They are no longer balancing the reactor. They are actively trying to smash it open with a hammer.
Which brings us to the leader of this whole operation, Abaddon the Despoiler.
Yes, Abaddon. Because when you have thousands of warriors falling to this siren call of unthinking rage, you are faced with a monumental internal crisis.
A crisis of existential proportions for the Black Legion. This kind of ideological schism could easily tear the largest traitor legion apart from the inside out.
Just a massive civil war.
Sparking a civil war that would literally do the enemy's job for them.
But he doesn't let it. And this is where the story pivots from a tragedy of internal collapse into what I can only describe as a masterclass in pragmatic leadership.
It really is brilliant.
Abaddon takes this crisis, this internal infection of unthinking rage, and he brilliantly coldly turns it into a strategic opportunity.
The historical record of the universe tells us that these cornate devotees were eventually organized and claimed by a powerful chaos lord, consolidating them into the actual faction we know as the Hounds of Abaddon.
Okay, so they get their own little department.
But the crucial detail, the hinge upon which this entire organizational psychology lesson turns, is how Abaddon reacts to this massive consolidation of extreme power within his own ranks.
Because his first instinct isn't to reach for the purge button.
No. And that is what separates him from a typical tyrant. This move is a profound testament to Abaddon's pragmatic leadership.
Right.
Rather than suppressing the bloodlust of his followers, rather than outlawing the worship of corn to enforce the Chaos Undivided mandate, he chose to harness it.
Let's spend some time here because this is where I think we really see the genius of this management style, and it's something that applies so heavily to the real world. Think about the containment strategy of leadership. In history, or in modern massive corporations, when a leader sees a huge, radicalized subfaction growing within their ranks, say, a rogue department that is flouting the rules, or a general who's becoming too aggressive and popular, the instinct is almost always suppression.
Always. You want to crush the dissent.
You crush it. You fire the rogue department. You purge the non-believers to maintain the purity of your original vision.
That's standard operating procedure.
Right. And if Abaddon had been an ideological purist about chaos undivided, he would have looked at these thousands of cornate worshippers, labeled them heretics to the Legion's core brand, and gone to war with them.
And in doing so, he would have ignited a catastrophic civil war.
Exactly.
Even if he won, he would have decimated his own forces, drained his resources, and left his legion incredibly vulnerable to external threats. Suppression is, frankly, the most resource-intensive form of management.
It is. You hit the nail on the head. He would be fighting the current of a river. He'd be wasting untold energy trying to police the internal thoughts and religious leanings of giant, genetically modified super soldiers who already have a propensity for violence.
In an unwinnable battle.
Completely. Instead, he completely flips the script. He weaponizes the dissent.
He embraces it.
Yeah, he basically brings them into the fold and says, okay, you guys don't want to balance the reactor anymore. You just want to be blindingly angry and destroy things.
Oh.
Fine. You're now the vanguard. You're the shock troops.
I'll give you exactly what you want.
Exactly. I'm taking you out of the delicate operational roles, and I'm putting you at the very front of the line where your absolute rage is exactly what I need.
If we connect this to the broader picture of leadership theory, we are looking at the ultimate triumph of pragmatism over ideological purity.
Pragmatism over purity. That's a great phrase.
Abaddon realizes that the grand cause, his ultimate strategic objective to conquer the galaxy, is vastly more important than the minutiae of how every individual soldier personally achieves it.
Right. He doesn't micromanage their beliefs.
He recognizes a fundamental, undeniable psychological truth about extreme aggression and rage.
Break that down for me. What is the fundamental truth about rage that he understands, that a lesser leader would just miss?
That suppressing a primal instinct like rage doesn't eliminate it, it merely confines it.
Just hides it.
It creates a pressure cooker. If you try to force a cornate berserker, someone whose very soul is vibrating with the need to shed blood, to sit still in a barracks and contemplate the delicate, pluralistic balance of chaos undivided, their rage will not dissipate.
It'll just fester.
It will eventually explode inwardly.
Yeah.
They will turn on their commanding officers. They will slaughter their own squad mates. They will sabotage their own infrastructure just to find a release.
They'll burn the house down from the inside just to watch the flames.
Exactly. It is a matter of thermodynamics applied to psychology. Oh, that's interesting.
But by acknowledging their nature, organizing them into the Hounds of Abaddon, and deliberately placing them at the forefront of the most brutal, high-casualty assaults, Abaddon is essentially opening a pressure valve.
He lets the steam out.
He accepts the inevitable explosion, but he meticulously ensures that it is directed entirely outward at the enemy lines.
Man.
He takes his biggest internal liability, a massive faction of uncontrollable berserkers, and transforms it into his most terrifying, effective asset.
So he essentially builds a structural gun barrel around the explosion.
That is a phenomenal way to visualize it.
Right.
An explosion in the open just creates a crater. An explosion inside a reinforced steel barrel drives a projectile forward with lethal force.
That is so true.
Abaddon provides the steel barrel. He provides the structure that makes the volatile, destructive reaction militarily useful.
Which sounds absolutely amazing in theory. Like you read a leadership book and it says, harness the passions of your team or build a gun barrel around the explosion.
It sounds great on paper. It sounds like a great TED Talk. But to actually execute this on a galactic battlefield, to literally direct a vanguard of thousands of superpowered berserkers who only want to kill, that requires an incredibly unique, highly specialized type of middle management.
Oh, absolutely.
You can't just point them in a general direction, say, go get them, and hope for the best.
No, you absolutely cannot. Because the moment the enemy is dead, if there is no structure, that unthinking rage will simply turn around and look for the next closest target.
Which would be their own guys.
Which would be the rest of the Black Legion, yes.
Yeah.
You need an incredibly robust control mechanism.
Right.
And the lore provides us with fascinating, almost counterintuitive details about that mechanism, specifically regarding the leadership of the Hounds of Abaddon.
Yes. And this is the part that completely threw me when I was digging into the sources. We know the Hounds are led by two powerful Chaos Lords.
Yes, two specific lords.
But it's their titles and their specific responsibilities that completely break the mold of what you would expect.
It's very surprising.
They hold the prestigious title of Lord Purgator within Abaddon's elite inner circle, which is known as the Chosen of Abaddon. And, most surprisingly, they command the Black Legion's Black Fleet.
This is perhaps the most crucial, revealing juxtaposition in the entire organizational structure of the Black Legion.
I want to really highlight this for you listening, because here's where it gets really interesting. Think about the contrast here.
It's a huge contrast.
We just established that the Hounds themselves are a blunt instrument. They are the vanguard. They are unthinking, blinding fury.
Pure rage.
So naturally, you would assume that the guys leading them are just the biggest, angriest, bluntest instruments of all.
Alpha dog.
Yeah. You'd picture a warlord who just screams, froths at the mouth, and hits things with a giant axe to establish dominance. But instead, we discover that these leaders, these Lords Purgator, command an entire naval armada. They command the Black Fleet.
The contrast is not an accident. It is a deliberate, highly sophisticated architectural choice by Abaddon.
It's wild. It's like finding out that the frontman for the most hardcore, chaotic, screaming death metal band in the world, the guy who smashes his guitar and bleeds on the front row, is also secretly a master chess player who manages international shipping logistics and supply chain algorithms in his spare time.
That's a hilarious image, but it's totally accurate.
How do those two skill sets even exist in the same brain? Commanding a spacefaring fleet requires astrogation. It requires managing fuel supply chains across light years.
It's pure mathematics and logistics.
It requires complex, three-dimensional tactical planning where you're calculating orbital bombardments that won't even land for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
That is the exact polar opposite of unthinking, immediate fury.
It is the exact opposite, and that tells us everything we need to know about what it takes to actually manage and weaponize truly chaotic forces.
Okay, lay it out for me.
Let's dissect their title first to understand their mindset. Lord Purgator.
Purgator.
The root of that word is purgation, cleansing, the removal of impurities. It implies a highly systemic purification process executed through destruction.
So they don't view themselves as just butchers or murderers.
No, and that is a vital psychological distinction. The title gives a twisted sense of nobility or almost a clinical holy duty to their slaughter.
Wow.
They aren't just unleashing random violence. They are orchestrating a massive, necessary purgation of the universe. They are surgeons excising a tumor.
That is dark, but very methodical.
But returning to your excellent point about the Black Fleet, this is the most telling detail about Abaddon's true brilliance in organizational structure. He doesn't put a berserker in charge of the berserkers.
Right.
He puts supreme, cold, calculating, strategic intellects in charge of the berserkers.
Wait, I have to push back there. Why wouldn't you put the biggest berserker in charge?
It seems like the natural hierarchy, right?
Yeah. Wouldn't the rank and file only respect someone who can outrage them? If I'm a cornate berserker, and my commanding officer is busy doing math to calculate an orbital trajectory, why don't I just slaughter him for being a weak nerd the second he tells me to wait in the ship?
It's a very logical question, but it misses the necessity of the gun barrel we discussed earlier.
Okay, remind me.
If you put the biggest, angriest berserker in charge, they won't manage the fleet, they won't calculate the logistics.
Because they're too angry.
They will just order a frontal assault on the very first target they see, regardless of the strategic value. They will charge the wrong hill, run out of supply lines, and get everyone killed in a glorious but ultimately useless massacre.
Ah.
The rank and file respect the Lord Purgator, not because the Lord is angrier, but because the Lord is the one who successfully delivers them to the greatest fields of slaughter.
So the Lord Purgator is the ultimate enabler.
Precisely. To command a spacefaring armada requires infinite patience, cold calculation, and a deep systemic understanding of logistics.
We have to be smart.
By placing these specific lords in command of the Hounds, it proves that the leaders of this volatile faction are far from mindless brutes. They are the sophisticated, reinforced steel of the gun barrel controlling the explosion.
They aim the weapon.
They possess the intellect required to calculate exactly when and where to drop the Hounds onto a planet to achieve maximum strategic devastation, rather than just random, localized, tactical violence.
That makes a lot of sense.
They don't fight the berserkers for dominance. They command them by being the architects of their release.
Okay, that makes perfect sense from a top-down view. We have this incredible multi-layered setup.
It's quite a hierarchy.
We have the brilliant, pragmatic CEO in Abaddon who decides not to fire the rogue department but to weaponize it.
Right.
We have these highly intellectual, strategically minded, heavy metal chess masters serving as the middle management lords Purgator building the gun barrel.
Exactly.
We've thoroughly established how the leadership balances this volatile dynamic. But what about the reality for the guys on the ground?
The Hounds themselves.
Yeah, what is the actual psychological reality for the rank-and-file Hound of Abaddon who is stuck in the middle, having to serve two very different, seemingly contradictory masters?
This is where we delve into the deepest organizational psychology of the source material. It highlights this exact tension as a core defining trait of their entire subculture.
Okay.
The Hounds possess a unique psychological framework defined entirely by dual loyalty.
Right. We know they serve Khorne as their patron god, answering that intense, visceral, gravitational pull of rage and blood we talked about earlier.
That pull is ever present.
But simultaneously, the lore insists they are utterly devoted to the War Master and his grand cause.
They are loyal to Abaddon.
This is where I struggle, and I really need you to break this down for me. From a purely psychological standpoint, how is that even possible?
Where do you see the friction exactly?
Where is the friction? It's everywhere. How is it physically and mentally possible to serve a god of unthinking fury, a deity whose only commandment is constant, mindless, uninterrupted bloodshed, while remaining utterly devoted to a structured, highly strategic, patient, grand cause managed by Abaddon?
They do seem like polar opposites.
Aren't those two loyalties fundamentally entirely at odds with each other? If my entire soul is devoted to unthinking rage, I shouldn't give a damn about a grand cause.
You'd think so, yes.
I shouldn't care about supply lines or 5-year galactic conquest plans. I should just be swinging my chain axe at the closest organic target, even if it's my own commanding officer or the guy standing next to me in the drop pod. How do they not just rip each other apart in the waiting room?
This raises one of the most important questions about the nature of fanatic devotion and how the mind, even a genetically modified one, compartmentalizes belief to prevent cognitive collapse.
Compartmentalization. Okay.
On the surface, you are absolutely right. It seems like an impossible terminal paradox. Unthinking fury and structured long-term strategy are oil and water. They should violently reject each other.
They really should.
But the architecture of the Hound suggests they have found a psychological synthesis, a deeply ingrained cultural mechanism to make the oil and water emulsify.
And how exactly do they achieve that emulsification? How do they square that circle in their own heads?
Yeah. By entirely splitting the nature of their reality and their perception of duty into two distinct, non-overlapping categories: the practical and the spiritual.
Okay, interesting.
Or to put it in terms of military operations, they separate the how from the where and when.
Okay, walk me through that. Give me the breakdown of the how versus the where and when.
Let's start with the spiritual. Khorne, the blood god, provides the how. He provides the methodology of destruction.
The actual act of killing.
He provides the boundless kinetic energy, the superhuman martial prowess, the adrenaline, and crucially, the absolute psychopathic absence of fear or hesitation.
He makes them the perfect weapons.
When a Hound of Abaddon finally makes contact with the enemy, when he swings his weapon, he is doing it as an act of pure, unadulterated worship to Khorne.
It's a religious experience for them.
The physical, visceral act of violence is dedicated entirely to the patron god. In that moment of combat, nothing else exists.
So Khorne is the engine. He is the methodology of destruction.
Precisely. Khorne is the internal combustion engine running red hot. But Abaddon, the War Master, and the Lord's Purgator who serve him provide the where and the when.
The where and when.
They provide the steering wheel, the transmission, and the map. They provide the context for the violence.
Which is just as important.
And this is vital to understand why they don't just kill each other. Unthinking fury, left entirely to its own devices, burns itself out incredibly rapidly.
Like a fire.
It is a massive forest fire with no containment lines. It consumes everything in its immediate vicinity, including its own fuel source, and then it just dies down to ash.
I see. So if they only worshipped Khorne, if they didn't have Abaddon, they'd just massacre each other in their own barracks the moment they felt angry.
Without hesitation.
They would never actually achieve anything on a galactic scale because they'd never survive long enough to get on a spaceship.
Exactly. They would be a localized, self-terminating phenomenon. But the grand cause of the War Master gives meaning, direction, and longevity to their need for slaughter.
It channels it.
It prevents the Hounds from burning themselves out in pointless, disorganized, fratricidal frenzy. The devotion to Abaddon ensures that when they finally unleash the unthinking fury of Khorne, they are doing it against a high-value, heavily populated target that actually advances their broader position in the universe.
Rather than just, slaughtering their mechanics and pilots.
Precisely.
So in a weird, twisted way, the devotion to Abaddon is almost like a subconscious survival mechanism for the faction.
That's a brilliant way to look at it.
It's the necessary rigid structure that allows their worship of Khorne to actually be sustainable over a decades-long military campaign.
Yes, it gives them longevity.
They willingly let the Lords of Slaughter drive the bus, handle the logistics, and deal with the boring astrogation bath, so that when the doors of the drop pod finally open, they get to do what they do best without having to worry about how they got there or how they are getting home.
Yes, you've hit the nail on the head. They completely offload the immense cognitive burden of strategy, planning, and logistics entirely onto Abaddon and their Lord's Purgator.
Which is a huge relief for a berserker, I'd imagine.
This absolute submission to the War Master's grand cause frees their minds. They don't have to think about the big picture anymore.
Because thinking about the big picture is what stressed them out in the first place with Chaos Undivided.
Exactly. They have entrusted the big picture to Abaddon, which allows them to fully, cleanly embrace the unthinking fury on the battlefield.
That is so close.
The two loyalties don't conflict. They actually support each other in a deeply twisted, symbiotic relationship. The grand cause delivers them to the blood, and the blood fuels the engine of the grand cause.
It's a terrifyingly perfect, closed-loop psychological system. And that fragile psychological balance, this internal emulsification of strategy and rage, combined with this elite, highly intelligent middle management structure we talked about, it culminates in how the Hounds actually operate when the boots hit the ground.
It does.
It results in a battlefield presence that the source material literally explicitly defines as their ultimate horror.
The phrase ultimate horror is not used lightly in this universe. It is a very deliberate categorization of their tactical reality.
Because it is absolutely not what you expect. When you hear about chaos worshippers, blood gods, and berserkers, you expect a messy, sloppy, disorganized fight.
You expect a bar brawl on a massive scale.
Yes. You expect a horde of screaming maniacs just running blindly at the guns. But the reality is so much worse.
So much worse.
They are not just mindless butchers charging across an open field. They are a controlled, deadly weapon unleashed with surgical precision. There's that X-ray laser-guided precision we talked about at the very beginning of this deep dive.
The ultimate horror is exactly that fusion. It is the seamless combination of the unthinking, apocalyptic fury of a cornate berserker with the cold, disciplined military purpose of a Black Legionnaire.
It's the reactor meltdown with the precision targeting system.
It is the marriage of those two concepts.
So let's bring this all the way back around. What does this all mean for us, the people sitting here trying to analyze this from a safe distance?
What's the takeaway?
I think it means we have to completely reevaluate what we actually find scary, both in fiction and in real organizational structures.
I agree completely.
Because the scariest monster isn't the one thrashing wildly in the dark, knocking over furniture, breaking things randomly, and making a ton of noise.
No, because you can hear that monster coming from a mile away.
Right? You can plan for it. You can bait it into a trap. You can evacuate your people.
Because that monster is entirely predictable in its unpredictability. It lacks agency beyond its immediate impulses.
Exactly. But the monster that waits patiently, the monster that holds the line, stands shoulder to shoulder with its pack, stays completely, terrifyingly silent in the dark while the fleet maneuvers into orbital position for 3 weeks.
And just wakes.
And just waits, and only unleashes its absolute, unrestrained, psychotic fury exactly when and where it is commanded to do so by a master strategist.
That is pure nightmare fuel.
It really is.
Mm.
Because you can't outsmart it. Its leaders are already outsmarting you on a galactic chessboard, while its soldiers are vastly outmuscling you on the ground.
You are beaten strategically before you are ever even beaten physically.
It forced a profound reevaluation of the enemy.
The lore actually concludes with an incredibly sharp metaphor regarding this exact dynamic. It states that their very existence proves the most effective, terrifying predators in the galaxy are those who successfully combine the boundless fury of the beast with the calculating cunning of the pack leader.
The beast and the pack leader. That duality again.
The engine and the steering wheel.
Yes. It all comes back to that.
And if we deeply analyze that specific phrase, cunning of the pack leader, it reminds us of a fundamental, fatal misconception that many people have about the nature of chaos as a faction, or even chaos as a concept in our own world.
What's the misconception?
Very often, chaos is misunderstood as mere disorganization. We equate it with a lack of rules, with random entropy, with noise.
Just static on a television screen.
Just static. But the existence and the operational success of the Hounds of Abaddon forcefully prove that true chaos, when it is organized, codified, and directed by a pack leader with a grand, overarching vision, ceases to be random noise.
It becomes a weapon.
It transcends entropy and becomes a massive systemic threat. A random mob of angry people might burn down a single building, but an army of people who have intentionally weaponized their own unthinking rage, suppressed their own egos, and subordinated that absolute fury to a master strategist.
They don't just burn down buildings.
No, they can systematically dismantle an empire brick by brick. The disciplined purpose hidden within the chaotic ranks is the true underlying horror. It is the realization that the madness has a method.
It really is a phenomenal case study, and it completely changes how you view the management of aggressive outlier factions in any system.
It applies to so many fields.
So just to recap the incredibly dense, fascinating journey you and I have taken today through this lore for everyone listening. We started by looking at a massive, broad, pluralistic organization, the Black Legion, and we saw how the grueling psychological toll of maintaining chaos undivided naturally birthed a localized cult of pure, absolute rage as a coping mechanism.
We saw how the human or superhuman need for tangible absolutes acts like gravity.
Right. And then we explored how a true, generational pragmatist, Abaddon the Despoiler, didn't fight that massive internal tide with purges or suppression.
Which would have ruined him.
Instead, he masterfully weaponized the descent, building a structural gun barrel around the explosion by placing highly intelligent, strategically minded Lords Purgator in charge of steering the storm from the bridges of the Black Fleet.
Then we dug deep into the incredibly intense psychological gymnastics required for these frontline soldiers to maintain a dual loyalty without losing their minds.
The emulsification.
Serving both the raw, kinetic emotion of the blood god for their how, and the cold, patient strategy of the war master for their where and when.
And finally, we saw how all of that intricate organizational architecture culminates in the surgical deployment of a vanguard of destruction. A faction that represents the perfect, terrifying fusion of the beast's unrestrained fury and the pack leader's cold cunning.
And why this matters to you, the listener, whether you are a fan of deep sci-fi lore or a student of organizational psychology, is because it challenges our fundamental assumptions about the relationship between structure and extreme emotion.
It really does.
It is a fascinating extreme case study in how immense, almost unstoppable power is generated not by forcing a choice between fury and discipline, but by discovering the exact, precise organizational structure needed to combine those seemingly contradictory forces into one devastating package.
Absolutely. It's all about finding that dark synthesis, building the laser guidance system for the Hurricane.
A laser-guided hurricane.
But as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over on your own time. Something that builds off the inherent instability of everything we've analyzed today.
Okay, what is it?
We've spent the last hour praising Abaddon's brilliant pragmatism, and we've marveled at this perfect, symbiotic fusion of the beast and the pack leader. We've talked about how perfectly the gun barrel contains the explosion,
But we must remember that systems based on containing extreme, intense pressure are inherently, fundamentally volatile.
Exactly.
The pressure never truly goes
The
away.
reactor's always humming. So my question for you to consider as you go about your day is this. What happens the day the beast's absolute devotion to the blood god demands a sacrifice or a target that the pack leader's carefully calculated grand cause simply cannot afford?
Ah, that's a terrifying hypothetical.
What happens when Korn demands the blood of Abaddon himself? Can the primal, unthinking fury of the beast ever truly be tamed forever?
I wouldn't bet on it.
Or is pragmatic leadership, no matter how brilliantly structured, ultimately just a temporary leash on an inevitable catastrophic betrayal? Think about that laser-guided hurricane we talked about at the very start of the deep dive. It is an incredibly effective, terrifying weapon, right up until the exact moment the guidance system fails, the control rods drop, and you realize you are still standing right in the middle of the storm.